What is good, my friends? Oh, how I have missed thee. This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan upstate, back in the saddle, looking for a little affection. Wonderful to be here with you guys today, and jam-packed over the next 4 hours are we, 3 to 7 p.m., and away we go. 844 fan phone. That's 844-326-3663 is the phone number to get to us on the show today. The text line is there for you at 71307. You can start your text with the word fan, and away you go. And our sparkling new YouTube channel is up as well. Still, honestly, guys, I'm figuring this out as you guys are. You know, like the Madre and the Padre are in town for one more day. They fly out tonight. I've got them set up at home right now with the YouTube channel on the big screen. And it's like, well, how do we know when the video comes up? And the answer is, I don't fully know. I don't fully understand. But we're going to figure this out. We're going to figure this out as we go along.
You got to take it out and blow on it. That's how.
Diesel, good to be back, man. What's good, man? What's good? How was the week? How are you doing?
It's been a crazy week, and we spent a lot more time talking about NHL hockey, I think, in the last 5 days on this show than the station ever has. So, yeah, we kind of caught the fever, and we came up with the perfect name for the South Carolina NHL team if we ever get one. I used to love the Greenville Spartans with Mr. Anderson as the mascot, but I think we've had to do a little update because I don't know if you know, Mark, we are famous in this state for having the world's hottest chili pepper grown right here in the state of South Carolina. And it's known as the Carolina Reaper. So why not be the SC Reapers?
You know, Diesel, there's an old school of thought that says, well, all these teams that have to have funky names, they're trying to compensate for something else, which is how I always feel when I hear the guy with the loud muffler going down the road, right? It's always how I feel. But then you get a name like the Kraken.
Yeah.
And you're like, man,
it's badass.
That is
right?
a badass team name. And then you get a name like the Reaper. And believe it or not, Diesel, I saw the logo for this that you whipped up and you put together.
AI just came up with this, and it's not bad.
I'm buying that.
Right?
I'm buying that logo.
A scythe in one hand and a flaming hot chili in the other.
I'm buying
Great.
That. So the only question is, how do we get hockey to the upstate? How do we possibly do that? All right, folks.
Well, we need people with money. That's what we need.
Here we go on the show. As we said, completely jam-packed and fired up. We've got a major transaction in the NFL that I don't think is going to do for this team what anyone else does. There was a viral interview. Now, Tommy Tubberville, Diesel, remind me, now Senator Tommy Tubberville?
He was at one point, he was an Alabama state senator, I think. Did he get all the way to federal government? I don't think he did.
Tommy Tubberville.
If he did, good Lord for our country.
Right. As the senior United States senator from Alabama. He's currently the senator from Alabama.
Okay, I was wrong.
He joined our buddy Jake Crain on Crain and Company, and had some viral takes that Jake Crain is going to join us to discuss, to dish about in a very viral interview. Fox News has picked up this interview. Can I just tell you guys one thing that royally cracks my coconuts, stains my Hanes, and this has happened against us as well here on this show, is that you'll have breaking news and almost nobody puts your name in your own breaking news. Now, one thing I really appreciated is that Fox Sports College Football did. When we had the news from Greg Sankey, we tweeted it out in November that the SEC is likely to go away from the division format, right? Likely to do away with that, likely to go to some sort of other system. We had the breaking news on that. And what I saw was like, this is disgusting. Like what everyone was saying was the SEC likely to go away from divisions, and nobody citing where it came from, right? And so that's happening to Crain and Company today. Like Fox News picked it up and it says, Tommy Tubberville says blah, blah, blah. No, the lead should be Jake Crain has Tommy Tubberville on, who says the following, right? Like that should be the lead. You should never get buried from your own breaking news. You have the news, right? But it's kind of a disgusting practice that is existing today in sports. So we go right to the source because Tommy Tubberville had some breaking news, had some big time controversial statements on Jake Crain. And so we'll go to Jake Crain coming up at 3:40. We've got Chris Phillips at 4:40. Is it time to press the panic button on Gamecock baseball? Ay caramba, what is going on there? Clemson baseball, South Carolina baseball, going in opposite directions. But let us open with this today. By the way, guys, how did Carlos and Diesel and how did everybody do last week? What did you think of the shows? 71307 on the text line is where you can get to us on the shows. Also, comments available, open for you right there on the YouTube page as well. Folks, there is a major discrepancy in terms of what folks think South Carolina is going to be next season. ESPN's Football Power Index says the Gamecocks are going to be 5-7 and overall the 42nd best team in the country. Dennis Dodd has a post-spring top 25 out. All right, he had a way too early top 25. Then now he has a post-spring top 25. And South Carolina is 20th, is a top 20 team in America in his post-spring top 25. So Dennis Dodd thinks the Gamecocks are going to be 9-3 or 8-4. And ESPN's FPI says the Gamecocks are going to be 5-7. So which is it? I even was able to see the likes of Brad Crawford, and I'm paraphrasing for Brad now, saying that measuring progress in terms of wins and losses for Shane Beamer in year 3 might not be the wisest move. I'm sorry, what? What? Like, how else do you measure progress? You know, like in our field, progress is measured by ratings, revenue, and downloads. That's how you measure progress. If you're not making progress in those areas, I'm not sure what else you could have that would signify progress. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing else you could throw out there that would signify progress. Ratings, revenue, and downloads is it. That's where you see progress. In college football, it's nice to have sparkling recruiting rankings. Then again, Will Muschamp had sparkling recruiting rankings, but he never had sparkling on-field success. Folks, when we have gone back and studied the new coaching hires in college football, who hits, who misses, etc., it is almost unanimously year 3 where the coach that is going to pop pops. Almost unanimously. Okay? It's when Dabo Swinney popped at Clemson was year 3. So realize, folks, I would say to you, if now is not the year that Shane Beamer is going to pop, I would simply ask you, when is that going to be the case? When is, if not now, when? 844-FAN phone. That's 844-FANFONE on the show. Shane Beamer has the exact same record as Will Muschamp through 2 years. The exact same record through 2 years at the school. All right? If Shane Beamer goes 7-6 this next year, he will have the same record as Will Muschamp through 3. So let me open by saying the following to you. And I'm going to look right into our handy-dandy YouTube here and say, read my lips into our YouTube camera. I think South Carolina is one of the most underrated teams in America. According to ESPN's FPI, according to over-under one-loss projections, I think they're one of the most underrated teams in America. But before you go celebrating about that as a Gamecock fan, let me say this to you. That means I also have higher expectations for you than many other folks have.
There is so much buzz around this team. They need Mr. Sparky.
They do. They do, Mr. Sparky of the upstate. You need him. Diesel, I look at ESPN's FPI right now, the Football Power Index. They now have the percentages out for each and every game. The Gamecocks are favored in 4 games next year. 4.
Well, that's the biggest downside to having a brutal schedule as South Carolina is going to have year in and year out. You could be a better team year over year, but end up with the same or potentially worse record, just depending on how the chips fall.
The Florida Gators are favored in 8 games this year. How about that? Florida favored in 4. Florida favored in 8. Gamecocks favored in 4. Now, I don't know where you come from, but where I come from, I expect South Carolina to be better than Florida this year. DraftKings says the over-under for the Gamecocks is 7.5 wins. The over or under for the Florida Gators this year, 6.5 wins is the Gamecocks over-under win total. The over-under for Florida is 5.5. That's second worst in the SEC. So who's right and who's wrong? I believe that CBS and Dennis Dodd are correct. I believe the Gamecocks are better than ESPN's FPI is. But I also believe that Beamer gets no pass here whatsoever. Gets no pass in year 3. This is almost unanimously. Go and study all of the new hires, okay, and who popped and who didn't. It is almost unanimously year 3 where you get the very, very clear, I do. Where you get the very clear, we got our guy. According to ESPN's FPI, there is a 35.6% chance of beating North Carolina. 96% chance of beating Furman. Diesel, the FPI thinks Furman beats South Carolina 1 time out of 20.
Furman's going to be a solid football team this year.
They think South Carolina's okay, check this out. They think Furman has a better chance of beating South Carolina than South Carolina has of beating Georgia.
Ooh.
That hurts.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that absolutely
The gap
hurts.
should be the opposite way.
Right.
Man.
54% chance the Gamecocks have of beating Mississippi State at home. Let's be honest, that number's a lot higher without Mike Leach. 18% chance of winning at Tennessee. 41% chance of beating Florida at home off a bye. What? 38% chance of winning at Missouri. 19% chance of winning at Texas A&M. 96% chance of beating Jacksonville State. 80% chance of beating Vanderbilt. 45% chance of beating South Carolina. And a 20% chance of beating Clemson. Early lines out for the Gamecocks right now. Early lines are out according to FanDuel. Here they are. North Carolina, South Carolina. Diesel, what's the line on that game?
North Carolina minus 7.5.
North Carolina -2.
Okay.
Georgia against South Carolina. Georgia -24.
Ooh.
South Carolina at Tennessee. Tennessee -13.
That seems high.
Clemson at South Carolina. Clemson -6.5.
Okay.
Clemson is a 6.
A 1 touchdown favorite on the road.
Favorite. Remember, we had Josh Pate on end of the year. He guessed 3.5 points. That was his guess for when the game is played. So, folks, there is a major discrepancy here in terms of what different entities expect the Gamecocks to be. ESPN is saying same old Gamecocks. CBS is saying brand new Gamecocks.
I do wonder how the shine is going to stick to Shane Beamer if he has the season that puts him in line with Will Muschamp through his first 3 seasons. The shot, like Shane Beamer could not be shinier to that fan base right now. Like, what will it take to knock the shine off of that apple? I think Shane will get a heck of a lot more benefit of the doubt than Will Muschamp ever did because of his youth, because of his excitement, because of his excitability, because of the culture that he's building at South Carolina. But at the end of the day, this is how many games have you won for me lately sport. And if he has a disappointing season and ends up there in the same place that Will Muschamp found himself after 3 seasons, there's going to be a handful, a very quiet, very small minority who want Shane Beamer to go.
I'll tell you, Diesel, they're number 8 right now in the 24/7 recruiting rankings for next year.
Mm-hmm.
At what point does that no longer matter? And you're saying to yourself, look, man, I'm tired of seeing all these high recruiting rankings and no on-field success.
Well,
now,
that would be a massive mistake, though, I think, to jump that gun and pull that trigger when you've got such insanely high recruiting classes. Now, again, it really matters what happens. Remember the conversation about Shane Beamer was he's got his buddies and he won't move on from his buddies even if they're not winning. If that conversation is allowed to persist, if something like that were to happen again, where one of Shane's longtime friends who's on this staff, there's got to be somebody somewhere on the staff. If you keep that guy around, even when his position group is vastly underperforming with the kind of talent they're getting, and you got to understand that talent takes a little time. You got to get them in the door first and give them a year or two to get on the field. But if that talent isn't winning, if you can't win with all that talent, then you got a big time problem. And then those conversations are going to start getting a little bit louder.
Yeah. And to be clear, guys, no one here is advocating on Offsides that, man, one more bad year and South Carolina is going to be looking for a new head coach. No. There is a difference between being on the hot seat and being under pressure.
Sure.
Under pressure. There's a difference there. Kirby Smart was under pressure a couple years ago because Georgia was not getting over the hump. Then they did get over the hump. He was never on the hot seat. I do not think that Shane Beamer should be on any hot seat until at least Diesel going into the 2025 season. Okay? So if they stink in 2023, if they stink in 2024, I think 2025 should be the first hot seat season. But I do believe this year Shane Beamer is under pressure. Because the inconvenient truth that Gamecock fans do not want you to know is that he's got the same record as Will Muschamp through 2 years. And especially the inconvenient truth is that, well, wait a minute. Like, where are the wins on this schedule? Okay, let's say that North Carolina clips the Gamecocks in the opener. That's what's favored to happen, right? Win against Furman. Let's say win against Mississippi State. And then you're looking at, okay, well, 5 more wins, where are those going to come from? Jacksonville State, Vanderbilt, Florida, Missouri, Texas A&M, Kentucky, Clemson. Where are the wins going to come from? I believe you're better than what some of the prognosticators are saying you are if you are a Gamecock fan. I believe you are significantly better. I think the fact that you're favored in 4 games and Florida's favored in 8 per ESPN's FPI, Football Power Index, I think that's a joke. An absolute joke. But the FPI knows more about your team than I do. Okay? The FPI knows more about your team than you do. And if they're right, and if all these mythical recruiting numbers keep popping really high, but you're not seeing the difference on the field, it's fair to wonder at that point. Remember, new coaches almost universally pop at their school in year 3. So there is pressure on Shane Beamer this year. 7-6, and he is Will Muschamp's identical twin through 3 years. Great to see you guys. Spur Daddy on the YouTube comment line says, "What's up, Mark? Good to see you back, brother. I saw you sent you a text on the national show Saturday. I read it, Spur Daddy, on the national show Saturday as well. We had the text line open, the local text line open. We got to all of the texts on the show with CBS Sports Radio. Hope your vacation was awesome. Man, it was amazing. It was amazing. Missed you guys, though. all sorts of recharged, fired up, ready to go. Coming up next on the show, Senator Tommy Tubberville paints a bleak picture for the future of women's sports. We'll tackle that next, right here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 p.m. today. Can I get an amen? Missed you guys tremendously. Let's see what you're saying on the text line today. Wow, really good response to start the show. Appreciate that, guys. Ricky in Spartanburg says Diesel always kills it. Fantastic. Texter says, I say the worst case scenario is 7-5. The best case is 10-2. I don't see 5-7. Well, this is from Spur Daddy. Spur Daddy also texted our show with CBS Sports Radio nationally on Saturday. Got to his text on the air. I think best case scenario, Spur Daddy's 9-3. I think worst case scenario is 6-6. I think the Gamecocks being favored in 4 games, according to ESPN's FPI. What do I mean by that? That means that in only 4 games are they better than a 50% chance to win. You look at the games, it would be close to 50-50. North Carolina, 35.6% chance to win. Mississippi State, 53.7% chance to win. Florida, 41.1% chance to win. Missouri, 37.7% chance to win. Kentucky, 45.1% chance to win. And Clemson, 19.6% chance to win. Favored in 4 games. What? Like, what are we missing here? Michigan J. Todd says, Mark, nice to have you back. Diesel is fantastic in your seat when you are out. He is the only fill-in host you need. 1 vote for Diesel to be the host. Do appreciate Carlos, all that Carlos did, and Carlos chiming in. And I feel like Carlos does a good job. And from what I could hear, Carlos and Diesel have a good combination. About 5 or 6 of you, Diesel, I started getting random texts when I was away saying that you and Carlos were calling me hacks about something. And it didn't even, like, I'm sitting out there looking at the mountains, man. It didn't even rise to the level of me going back and listening to what you guys said.
Carlos calls himself a hack constantly. So you gotta put it in context of how he's using the word. But we had some major issues with your rules of sports fandom.
Yeah. That most people usually do.
Yeah.
Texter says, I looked at Florida's schedule, and it looks like they could go 4-8. Spur Daddy, I don't disagree with you. But Florida's favored in 8 of their games. South Carolina's favored in 4. Texter says, Mark, Gamecocks 6-6 at best. Texter says, as a Clemson fan, I'm a Clemson fan, and I even know South Carolina will win more than 4 games. The Gamecocks are an 8-9 win team. Texter says the Gamecocks had Notre Dame transfer running back in for a visit this weekend, yet Logan Diggs is down to a decision between 2 schools, and the Gamecocks is one of them. That would be a huge get for a team that doesn't have a bell cow back. It's the same running back that took a swing pass 75 yards to the house against South Carolina in the Gator Bowl this year, and also a 39-yard run for another touchdown. Texter says Shane Beamer has earned 6 years, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree with you, Texter. I agree with you. Like what I said was, if he stinks in 2023 and stinks in 2024, he'd be on the hot seat in 2025. But I also believe there's pressure on him to win this year. Because if he doesn't, through 3 years, for all the hype and hoopla, he's no better than Muschamp. Texter says, is Ryan Day on the hot seat or under pressure after losing to Michigan 2 years in a row and still no natty? No hot seat, but pressure. Yes, pressure. The same pressure that Kirby Smart was on 2 years ago. Ryan Day is under now. Texter says, you got to trust Vegas, not ESPN. Well, Texter, here's my beef with that.
Meaning, I don't like what ESPN has to say, so I automatically distrust it.
Right. Here's my beef with that, Texter. Like, everybody, you can make a mistake as a fan of saying, well, we hit our over, so we had a successful year. No, you didn't. Like, South Carolina, DraftKings has the over-under of 6.5 wins. I consider 7-5 for the Gamecocks this year a disappointment. There are teams that have an over or under win total of 1.5 wins. If they go 2-10, you mean to tell me that's a successful year? So don't make the mistake of determining success or failure by an over or under number. Trust me when I tell you, if Florida goes 6-6, there's not a single Gator fan, self-included, that would think Florida had a successful year. Oh, but they hit the over. Who gives a bleep? 6-6 is not meeting the Gator standard, right? So here we go again. Our standards have not changed. The goal for the Gamecocks is 9-3. 8-4 is a success, because then you would be maintaining something that Will Muschamp was not able to do. Will Muschamp had a 9-4 year in year 2, couldn't maintain it, slipped back to 7-6 in year 3. You go 8-4 2 years in a row, you have moved the bar. It's not just a blip now, the improved play, it's a trend, right? If you go 7-5, it's a disappointment. If the Gamecocks go 6-6, it's a failure. That is the breakdown. We can all agree on that, right? Goal, successful, disappointment, failure. 9-3, 8-4, 7-5, 6-6. There's pressure on Shane Beamer this year. All right, so we've got Jake Crain from Crain and Company joining us in the very next segment, guys. And I want to bring you into this because they had Tommy Tubberville on their show, Crain and Company, in an interview that went viral. And it was all about women's sports and legislation that is passing in regards to women's sports. And there are some great clips here. I got 2 clips for you. One is about Joe Biden. One is about Megan Rapinoe. Now, you'll hear that Tubberville doesn't pronounce Rapinoe's name correctly. But it's really alarming to consider what could potentially be happening to women's sports. Tommy Tubberville updates us here in clip number 1.
What's happening? In about 2 weeks, Joe Biden is putting an executive order down to all the schools across the country saying, all right, here's the new deal. Title IX is still in effect, but if you do not allow biological boys to play against women, if they say they're a woman and you disallow that, you're going to lose your federal funding. That starts in 2 weeks. So basically in the 2023 school year, starting August, September, we're going to have a new law from the White House, from the Democrats saying, the heck with y'all. We want the 0.03% of the people that think that they're boys instead of girls or vice versa. They get an opportunity to compete against who they want to. And here's their reason. They said it's such a small percentage. Think about this. Coaches love to win, and especially in college sports. You know, I was in it for a long time, and you have to try to keep your job. And the only way to do that is winning. What's going to happen is you're going to have a surgence of biological boys saying, hey, they're going to let me compete against women. I'm going to do this. And then you're going to have coaches that's going to start recruiting these biological boys in women's sports in college. And so it's going to turn out to be a non-factor for women and girls. They're not going to have the opportunities that young men have had and young boys have had. And it's going to go back to no Title IX. And it's going to be a disaster. But you can't reason with these people up here. They don't understand that. They think that everybody's just going to do the right thing. And that's not going to happen.
Number one, folks, this rule is going to be a disaster. This legislation is going to be a disaster, an unmitigated disaster. Point number 2 that I would make, though, is, Diesel, like, I can't see you or I saying, okay, I'm allowed to compete as a girl, so I'm going to compete as a girl. I can't see you or I doing that. You know, hey, man, I'd be more successful against women. You know, I ran track and field in high school. My time, if I was a woman in the 800-meter dash, would have won the district meet. Okay, I would have been the fastest in the district as a woman. I wasn't the fastest on my own team as a man in the 800 meters. How many people are really going to say, I'm going to compete as a woman? I don't know that that's going to happen, but to the very small percentage that is undergoing gender changes. Like, this is going to be catastrophic. It's going to be catastrophic. In clip number 2 here, Tommy Tubberville speaks about Megan Rapinoe. And he's incorrect when he says she was an average soccer player. She was the world's best soccer player, but he's correct about the rest of it.
Yeah, if the Rapone girl is just talking about, where she's retired now out of soccer, and she was a pretty average player, but she was an activist, and this mainstream media gave her a loudspeaker to voice her opinion, and that's fine. But the problem is, if she's voicing now her opinion that, hey, trans boys should be able to compete against women. Well, if that would have happened during her career, she'd have been working at Safeway or Piggly Wiggly. She would have never got on the field. But now that she's retired, oh yeah, I'm all for this. And that's the biggest bunch of crap I've ever heard.
So he's right, Diesel. I think he's right. Now, I had a debate. I was having lunch with mom and dad today. I had a debate, and my dad said, Mark, I think the women play a more fundamentally sound game. Their passes are more crisp. I said, Dad, we had on John Harkes from the Greenville Triumph, used to play on the men's national team. And I asked him a question that immediately triggered him, got under his skin. And I said, why is our men's team not as good as our women's? He goes, what do you mean? If the men's team played the women's team, it would be 10-0 men before you could blink. My dad said, not so sure. And I said, Dad, he goes, John Harkes has never coached he's never coached women. And I said, well, Dad, if the women's team plays the men, how many do the women win? And he said, probably 3 out of 10. And I said, Dad, they're not going to win one. But everybody has a different opinion on that. The only hard evidence we have is track and field, these, because those are the only sports which offer us numbers which can be compared, right? The fastest women's time ever in the 100 is 10.49. Fastest for a man, 9.59. Compare the shot put throws. Compare the high jump. Compare the javelin. Those are the only sports that offer us any comparison at all, right? But Tubberville is right that Rapinoe wouldn't have had 1/10 of the career that she did if she had biological men playing with her. And that is the problem here.
Yeah. If the women would even score a win in a 10-game series, it wouldn't be until the 7th or 8th game, so they have time to figure out how to counter that just increased athletic ability that the men's team would have. Like, you may be able to defeat that with better strategy. Maybe not. I mean, it still may be 10-0 at the end of this thing. Are we going to end up at a point where you have transgender males competing against women where they have an asterisk next to their name? Like, where they compete and, they'll just dust the women in the field because they have increased athletic ability or superior athletic ability. But there has to be a different classification. Sure, you can run on the same track. You can run in the same events. Now, the sad part of that, of course, is it takes away a space in the event for the 10th best woman at a given event. It takes away an opportunity there to compete. Well, then somebody will say, well, it's defamatory to put an asterisk next to the name because now you're calling extra attention to their gender choices.
An asterisk means something isn't really real.
Correct.
Right? So that is the problem. My take is you got to draw the line somewhere. You do. Jake Crain next on this viral interview with Tommy Tubberville that was on his show, Crain and Company. We're Offsides. Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel is in your ear canal. Here on the Fan Upstate on a Monday. Fantastic to be back with you. Unbelievable vacation in Bryson City, North Carolina for the last week. You know, folks, I think the irony here is, right, let's talk politically for a moment, okay? Let's just be honest. The left paints the right as being bad people, which rubs the right people the wrong way. You're not giving everyone their rights. But in this particular instance, in my opinion, it is the right point of view, meaning right-leaning, and it is the correct point of view, and it is the most pro-women's point of view to say you compete as the gender that you were born as. That is the take that is pro-women's rights. If I said to you I was going to introduce you to a feminist, and I said, what side do you think the feminist leans toward? 99.9% of you would say the feminist leans left. Yet in this case, it is those people that saying you should compete as your biological gender. That is very pro-women's rights. Joining us right now is the host of this viral interview with Senator Tommy Tubberville, Crain and Company. The show is absolutely blowing up. It is fantastic. Check it out every day of the week, 7:30 a.m. Eastern time on YouTube. Jake Crain joins us right now on the show. Good afternoon, Jake. What's good, brother?
Gentlemen, it's always good when I can come on. It's been a little bit, but love getting it on here and chopping it up with y'all.
Yeah, Jake. So I wanna bring you into this, Jake, because I was having lunch with my folks today, and I was bringing them into this discussion, and like my old man has a way of always giving me a different viewpoint, always giving me something to chew on. My mom does as well. And they said, Mark, well, what do you do about intersex people? People who, were born with both X and Y chromosomes. People who have ovaries but might have testicles as well, right? Like, what do you do about that? And I looked at them and I said, I don't have the answer. But I believe you have to draw the line somewhere. And I think the line should be the gender that is on your birth certificate. And my dad said, why? Why do you have to draw the line somewhere? And I said, otherwise, you have, for the same reason, Jake, that people are upset about unemployment, because for every one person who desperately needs it, you have 9 freeloaders who are avoiding work. You got people ruining women's sports in so doing. So how would you address, the small percentage of people that have both sets of chromosomes, Jake? What do they perform as?
Well, it's a very, very small percentage of people, and I actually have a solution. I hate people that complain without. I don't hate people, but I don't like when people complain without solutions. Now, to me, it's if that is the case, which puberty are you going through? I think that has a big deal with it, and that's kind of the cutoff of what some people are saying. And I'm not even going to get into the other argument of kids, under the pubescent age. But how are we even talking about this? Like, how is this even a thing? Like what? The fact that we're having to come on here and say why biological men shouldn't play against women, and the small percentage of intersex, like I said, I mean, that's a very small percentage. That's not something that should move the needle in this case, because it's just flat out dumb. That's what it is. I mean, I would have told you, I'm sure your parents are great people. They raised a great son. Obviously, I'd have been like the same reason why you wouldn't challenge mom to a one-on-one basketball game for money, because we all know that men have anatomical, biological, and physiological differences than women. It is what it is. I mean, you can try and do these mental gymnastics to say, well, in this hypothetical, at the end of the day, I look up and the sky's blue. Okay. I know that 1 + 1 = 2. And I know that men should not be competing against women. Men should not be in women's locker rooms, and men should not be in women's bathrooms. It's just the truth. It's common sense. But the fact, it's almost scary that we even have to have this conversation. Like, that's the part that worries me the most, if we're going to be honest.
Jake, a point that Mark and I brought up in the previous segment was, what happens when you have a biological male competing in a women's sport with a limited amount of surface area on the playing field, and it removes a woman who's spent her entire life building up and working towards an achievement. For example, if you're talking about an Olympic race where there's only 8 lanes on the track, are you going to kick the 8th fastest woman in the world off the track because a man wants to run against her? I mean, how in what world is that fair? So what do you do in these situations where you got people who have worked their entire lives for something to be removed from it because someone else who's going through their own sexual identity situation wants to just waltz in and take their place?
Yeah, it's cheating. Why do we not let guys take steroids? Because it's cheating. It gives you a physical unfair advantage. But it is the ultimate irony that people like Megan Rapinoe, who doesn't have any skin in the game anymore, Sue Bird, all these people that are coming out for it, like Coach Tubberville said, if men would have played, the U.S. women's national team lost to a group of 15-year-old boys in Houston. 15-year-old boys. They have to drive a car with an adult in the car. They can't even drive by themselves yet. And we all know how crazy it is. But right now, they would kick them out because the greatest irony of all this is they're using Title IX, which was built to protect female sports, to let men ruin female sports. And these people like Leah Thomas and all these, they are the patriarchy. It's men taking over a women's space. That's the greatest irony in all this. It is the exact opposite of what so many women work to build up. Guys, Billie Jean King came out against not letting men play in women's sports. Are you kidding me? It's, to me, I don't know the way to put it. It's a sickness. Like, it's got to be, right? It's a delusion. It's a mental illness to think that men and women are exactly the same on the playing field. That's just not true. I mean, what's it going to take? What's it going to take for these people to wake up? I know Jake Shields, the UFC fighter, a trans, a woman who identifies as a man, said that he would fight her in the octagon. Jake Shields going to beat that girl to sleep. Look at what Fallon Fox did to those poor ladies. It's just, we went from storming the beaches at Normandy as men to wearing bikinis on the beaches as men. And listen, I don't care who you love. If you want to dress up as a woman, tickle me Elmo, or wear a hot dog suit, I don't care. But the fact that you are going to allow biological men to compete against biological women is not only sick, it's cowardly, and it's not common sense. And we must be the most privileged society in the world that this is even a question. My dog knows that that's not fair.
So, Jake, here's a real world example. It sounds a little absurd, but it is very plausible, very possible to happen. What would stop 23 men from basically performing the movie Ladybugs and going out and competing as the U.S. women's national team and winning a World Cup, other than the absurdity of the situation where the entire world would say, oh, that's not fair?
Nothing. Nothing. Because nowadays, here's the difference. There's you're given a false choice. They say either you let the trans community play against the opposite gender or you hate trans people. Well, I could say, okay, if you're doing that, then you hate women. Like, that's not the choice. Nobody's getting denied a right. If you want to play sports, you can be transgender. Do what you want to do, but play against your own gender. Heck, guys, I'm even to the point where, you know what? Let's create a division then. Let's create a division. You can put trans people in there. Y'all can have men competing against women. I'm going to tell you which side I'm going to bet on to win. And as a sports gambler, part of me is like, you know what? If it happens, I'm going to be raking in the dough unbelievably because these spreads are going to be out of their minds because it's fairness, right? What happened to the spreads on the game? You can't say that the men are going to beat the women by this much or you're transphobic. That's fine. Go ahead and give me my money. But nothing is stopping them because people have lost their minds. They have totally lost their minds. And it's crazy. I feel like, we're the only people saying it. I mean, we got Riley Gaines coming on our show yesterday who literally tied with a 6'4" biological man who was allowed in their locker room without them even knowing, changing in front of them. I just can't even believe that we've gotten to this point, but somebody's got to shine a light on this craziness, and that's fine if we got to do it.
Jake Crain joining us from Crain & Company. Jake, there are, at last check, there are an even number of people who have gender identity issues. When I say that, I mean an even number of people that are men that feel like they should be women. There are an equal number of people of women who feel like they should be men, yet that number is very unequal when it comes to sports. You only have men wanting to play as women.
Yeah.
In the effort of fairness and honesty, do you think we will ever see an example of the reverse? Do you think we will ever see a woman who identifies as a man want to compete with men? Like it just, to me, the whole valor behind the argument falls right on its face when you consider we have exactly zero examples of the other side happening.
Yeah, the only way it'll happen is publicity stunts. I'll give you two of them. Sarah Fuller at Vanderbilt kicked an average squib kick and won SEC Special Teams Player of the Week. Are you kidding me? And then you have this female pitcher who's at Brown, who's had thrown one pitch, I think it was a ball, and hasn't registered anything else at all for the team, but she's the first Division I female player. It's a publicity stunt because guess what? It doesn't work like that. You want to know why it doesn't work like that? Because of nature. That's why. Because that's just how it is. Like, that's how life is. If I go jump off a 100-story building without a parachute, I'm going to go splat on the ground because of gravity, because that's just how the world is. There are no examples because there can't be examples at a legitimate level. What, you going to put a girl in the NFL and watch her get broken like a Mr. Potato Head where they got to pick her arms and legs up off the floor? It's just, it's sad to this point, but you're not going to see that, Mark. The same reason you're not going to see a unicorn and the snuffleupagus and find a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow, because this isn't fantasy land. I don't want to live in rainbow land where the unicorns are made of fudge, and I won't live in rainbow land.
But I like living in Crain Company land.
It's a quality campaign reference, Jake. Thank you very much.
I was hoping y'all pick up on that.
7:30.
When is Marty Huggins going to take a lie detector test? I mean, come on, let's get some answers.
It's a mess.
Now streaming Monday through Friday on YouTube, 7:30 a.m. Eastern time. Jake, always, I love the interview. Oh, Jake, one more point. Sorry about this, Diesel. One more point.
You're good.
It absolutely burns my brownies, brother. Okay, and this has happened to me. Okay, why in the hell are all of these media outlets not leading with the fact that this was on your show? I'm on y'all's account, and I'm seeing you say you can watch the interview right here. That is the biggest violation that we've discussed in this entire segment, Jake, that these media outlets are saying Tommy Tubberville says this. The first words out of their mouths should be, on Crain and Company, Tommy Tubberville says this. Like, does it not, like when I've broken news and that happens to me, Jake, that's infuriating to me, man.
Yeah, look, my thing at the end of the day, you got to dig into the interviews to actually find it. But, when it comes down to that, if it's out of my control, it's out of my control. We're just going to keep putting out great content, keep being ourselves. And, the show's growing by leaps and bounds. So look, if they want to swagger jack, as the kids call it, that's fine. But at the end of the day, it's like Drake said, you can't make the music I make, so I'm not going to stay up at night.
There you go. Good stuff, man. We'll be watching tomorrow morning. Thanks for joining us, pal.
Hey, thanks, guys. Always a good time.
All right. Take care. Jake Crain of Crain and Company right here on the show. Coming up next, the best and worst picks from the NFL draft. It's Offsides. What's good, my beautiful babies? This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstates, rolling on until 7 p.m. today. Can I get an amen? So many comments coming in. It's great to see. You always want to try to be on the hot button stuff in the community. If not, what conversation can you generate that will create engagement with your community? And, look, there's nothing out there in sports right now, involving Clemson or South Carolina that is overly hot, right? South Carolina got swept in a baseball series. Clemson is now number 16 in America in the baseball poll. Clemson gets a transfer commitment from Syracuse guard Joe Girard, averaged 16.4 points per game last year. That could save Brad Brownell's job, one of the best transfers on the market. But none of those things by themselves, right, are like the lead of a show.
Well, my team, App State, who's been god-awful in baseball for more than a decade, beat the ever-loving tar out of the number 6 in the country, Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, 11-0 in the first game of the 3-game series over the weekend.
And you're damn right, Diesel will crow about
Coastal
that.
ended up winning the series, but that doesn't matter. They're supposed to win the series. They're a top 10 team.
So today, we open with the FPI discussion on South Carolina. They're only favored to win 4 games. CBS says South Carolina's top 20. There's a discrepancy there. We open talking about that. This Tommy Tubberville interview is viral, in which he says, look, this is going to be catastrophic. This Joe Biden legislation is going to be catastrophic to women's sports. We put that in there. Ton of interaction. It's not the NBA playoffs. It's not the NHL playoffs.
Yeah.
It's not Major League Baseball. It's none of that.
Here's how you get around that, Mark. If you are in a race like I was talking about, there's only 8 lanes on a track. If you were set to be the 8th person, the 8th woman in that race, and you got booted out because a transgender woman wanted to run in the race, sue the federal government for discrimination. Sue them. You can't kick me out of a race that I earned my right into because by putting someone else in that race ahead of me.
Wouldn't that be something?
Sue the government.
The very thing that the government is trying to avoid by not being discriminatory is being discriminatory against something else, which is, Diesel, almost always the way discrimination works.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
It's like if you can swing too far one way and then you are being discriminatory against another group of people.
Are you going to have to put a separate lane on the track and paint it a different color so that everyone knows if somebody comes out of lane number 9 and just trounces the field, oh, don't worry, that's a man competing in this race.
It's something else, guys. It really is something else. So let's get to your comments. Guys, I also want to let you know this. We're going to start something new here this week. At the end of the show, those of you that make it to the end of the show, and we have people coming in and out at different times, I've learned that depending on your schedule, we have a 3 o'clock audience. The 4 o'clock audience is different than the 3 o'clock audience. 5 o'clock is different than the 4, and 6 o'clock is different than the 5. At the end of the show every day, we're going to congratulate the person who sent us the best tweet during the show. We're going to congratulate the person who sent us the best text during the show. And we're going to congratulate the person who sent us the best YouTube comment during the show. So we have the best thing we heard today right at the end of the show. And then we will do that at the end of every show. So looky, here's a cookie. You're competing for something you didn't even know you were competing for. We'll do that at the end of every show. Early leader in the tweet department, Tiger Pal Rachel, has Joey from Friends dragging 3 women trying to tackle him, Diesel, in football. Can you see that? Can you see
I
that,
remember
kid?
that episode.
And Tiger Pal Rachel says, case in points, here is why you don't have men competing against women. G-Man Bills fan tweets into the show. He says, Mark, for the Gamecocks, I predict 6-6. And I'm telling you, that would be a freaking failure. That would be a failure. Let's see here. Texter says 71307 on the text line. Mark, the major difference between Beamer and Muschamp is that Beamer has the higher quality wins, especially against Clemson. Now, Clemson fans, are you going to allow your name to be done like that on this show? Are you going to allow that, Clemson? One of my favorite moments on this show was in my first 6 months. Somebody called in and said, Mark, we're about to get hooked on phonics here. Here we go. There's no P, no Z. Say it with me now. Clemson. Yeah. No P, no Z. Clemson. 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 4 years later, how am I doing on the name, guys? Do I still need work? Clemson. Yeah. Am I doing well? Texter says, we are quickly going down the drain, gentlemen. I don't disagree with you. I'm going to bring you into a conversation that my family probably wishes that I would keep off the air. But Diesel, I'm not lying to you. Angela and I, Jackson is about to be 6. All right. When Jackson is an age that we deem possible, in other words, for our retirement, we're considering just leaving the United States of America. I'm serious. We're considering leaving for our retirement because we're so fed up with the shootings, with some of this nonsense, with so many different things going on in America. I gotta share something with you about vacation. And I didn't remember to do this right away, Diesel, because it was right at the beginning of the vacation. But we went out to Fountain Inn for the American Italian Festival, which was incredible. And then we went out to Spartanburg the same day for Spring Fling. Just Jess met my family out there, and Angela and Jackson and mom and dad and everything. And we get to Spartanburg, and Spartanburg, you guys did a fantastic job with Spring Fling. I love it. I said to my mom, both at Fountain Inn and then again at Spartanburg, the Spring Fling, I said, I don't want to have in my mind that a shooting could happen here. But at both places, Diesel, when I arrived, my mind went there.
It's impossible not to nowadays.
Right. And I said to Angela the other day, I said, whenever these people die in these shootings, you say, man, that really sucks. Wrong place, wrong time. But it almost feels inevitable that all of us are going to be in the wrong place at the wrong time at some point here, the way things are going.
It's like pulling up next to an accident that just happened on the interstate. Like, man, I just missed this by 2 minutes.
Right. Wrong place, wrong time. But this is happening so often that it feels like we're all going to have our wrong place, wrong time moment. And the only question is, are we going to survive that moment or are we not? That's the $1 million question. So we're at these festivals and I say to my mom, I said, Mom, I don't want to be thinking about this, but this is where things are in this country, where we're at this festival and you got a few thousand people out here. And then we're in Spartanburg and you got a few thousand people out here. And I'm immediately thinking, okay, how do we get out of here if bleep goes haywire? Where do we go if things go haywire? So we're sitting down for a meal, Diesel, and we're sitting down for a meal outside in Spartanburg, and at the Upstate's favorite bar, which, by the way, my old man says the best fish and chips he's ever had in his life is at Delaney's Irish Pub. We're outside at Spring Fling. We're all having dinner together. And suddenly everybody starts running. Everybody starts running. And there's panic looks on their faces. And they're running right in front of us. Now, what I'm about to tell you is actually hilarious. Because everybody starts running and you hear somebody say gun, right? And there's hundreds of people running around us and we're sitting at the table. And I grab Angela and I grab Jackson and mom and dad. Guys, we got to go. We got to go. And Angela actually says, Diesel, she actually says, we can't leave. We haven't paid yet. As if we should go up to the gunman, the would-be gunman, and say,
could you wait?
Sir, before you commence with your slaughter, could you please allow us to pay?
How much would you tip on a $92 bill?
We can't leave. We haven't paid the bill yet. Now, folks, this was a false alarm, and everyone got back to enjoying the Spring Fling. But for about 60 seconds, it was heroin, because nobody knew what was real, what wasn't. They could have seen somebody, Diesel, carrying legally for all I know. I don't know if that's legal at a festival. I don't know the rules. But they could have seen somebody carrying legal. The point is that, we're done with this crap. I'm so over what is happening in this country in so many different areas. You got the mall shooting in Allen, Texas on Saturday. You got 7 people being run over on Sunday. You got people pouring over the border illegally like a sieve. You got men competing against women. I feel like this is the Ghostbuster scene, Diesel. Cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. I feel like that's our life right now. What are we doing? Like, seriously, what are we doing? It's like, I feel like all this came from social media, and I feel like social media is trashing America. And I can't imagine I'm the only person right now that's listening to this that's thinking, yeah, me too, Mark. My wife and I have thought about retiring elsewhere, retiring in Spain, retiring in Italy, like living in one of those little villages where like the village is the town, and you leave your little loft and right outside is the local bar, and you walk across a river walkway. And like, I
could just retire to BFE, Montana.
You could.
It's basically the same thing.
Right. You could. Right.
That is if you could handle the cold, which we all know you cannot. Maybe more of a New Mexico guy.
Yeah, no. Texter says, Mark, elections have consequences. Texter says, as a father of 4 girls, this kind of legislation infuriates me. This sets back women's rights big time. This is not good for women's sports. So says Spur Daddy. Texter says, a lot of pro-female athletes stand up for women's rights till it goes against their political party and agenda they're associated with. Jake Crain is pro-women's rights. I am pro-women's rights. Diesel is pro-women's rights. All right? You compete as the gender you were born as. You go to the restroom as the gender you were born as. If you have a different set of rules and guidelines than that, then you have predator men showing up in bathrooms with your daughter because they identified with being a woman that day. This is not hard, folks. This is not hard. Texter says, Hall of Fame tennis player Martina Navratilova made them mad last week when she said there should stand alone a separate sports league for transgender individuals.
Totally fine with that. Look, women had to work their asses off for decades to get sports built for them, to get leagues built for them, to get advertisers to care about these leagues that they built. So why does one group of athletes get to skip all of that and just take those women's place in their sports?
What's going on? Right. What's going on YouTube here, Diesel?
What's going on here on YouTube? Well, we got Kevin Hines jumping in a lot, saying things like he's glad that his kids are already done with their athletics. He did talk about a situation where at his kids' middle schools and high schools, I guess it was a rather small school, didn't have enough boys and girls to compete in some sports separately, so they would combine some of the teams, and sometimes you would have women who were better athletes in those given sport. Yeah, Kevin, that is very possible. It does happen from time to time. Let's see here. We got Spur Daddy, who said the whole issue is cowardly. Marker's right. Only men want to go into female sports, not the other way around. It's more about cowardly men than a gender identity issue. Let's see here. Yeah, Spur Daddy just chiming in. Kevin Hines chiming in a couple more times as well. Spur Daddy says, boys that used to be no good at sports now say, oh, look, this is our out. And we can say we're girls and go dominate women's sports. Something has to be done about this. This is a way bigger issue than NIL.
Agree completely. Texter says, does Jake Crain, do people really dress as Tickle Me Elmo? Diesel knows somebody who dresses as animals.
Yeah. I was out at a bowling alley one night, and we walked in, and there was a gathering of furries taking up, I think they had rented 3 or 4 lanes on a Saturday night, busy Saturday night at the bowling alley. There's about 10 or so grown adults dressed in costumes. And I'm talking like, these look like college level mascot man in a plush costume type of costumes. And that is what these people do. They like to dress up as animals and go out in the world and live their lives. And who knows, maybe get it on later that night, dressed as these animals. And it's a community called furries. That's what they do.
Best Halloween costume you ever had? What was it?
Oh, best Halloween, man. It was probably my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle costume as a kid. Best radio bit I ever did. And this was such a good bit. This was a couple years ago on 93.3 The Planet. I had a girl call in to the show and say that she was in fact a furry and that she was going to be going out on Halloween and was looking for furry love on Halloween. So she was calling into the show. You know, about every 45 minutes or so, she would call in and give me an update, like what bar she was going to. She would say, hey, I'm going to this bar downtown. I'm dressed as a fox. I love men who I love otters and bears. If you come to this bar, I'll be there for the next hour, dressed as an otter or a bear. I will be there dressed as a fox. Come and find me. And I'm looking for love tonight.
So if a listener said, I'm looking for furry love, you mean to tell me, Diesel, that's not a listener looking for a woman who doesn't shave her legs?
No, that would be called a French woman, but no, that's not the bit.
All right, here. Let's see here. Dorman alum Miles Tate is transferring to Appalachian State from Butler. Very interesting news there. Texter says, man, Jake Crain is really good. Yes, he is. That's why we have him on. Texter says, Diesel, people have been getting screwed forever. Think nepotism at Clemson. What is this nepotism at Clemson example that you guys are talking about? Let us know what example that is. Is this, is it Dabo and his son, Venables and his son? I mean, is that what you're saying nepotism is? Texter says, let's see here. Just joining, what did I miss about Percy, Uncle Joe, and his DA legislation? Well, there's going to be new legislation that says if you do not allow biological men to compete in the women's division, that you lose your funding in college athletics. That bill is about to pass. Hey, Mark, any chance that South Carolina gets transfer running back Logan Diggs? So says Sherb, a big chance, Texter. A very, very big chance. Mark, if all the women who were about to compete against a biological man were to walk away, this would be self-correcting. Very interesting, Dan B. If all the women just said enough, I'm not doing this.
Well, you got a lot of women in athletics who support trans issues as well. So you might be able to get half to walk away
until it knocks them out of a competition.
Yeah.
Texter says, I'm not surprised. This is a texter. He says he's not surprised something goes on at Spring Fling. Every time I've gone over there, it's either a fight or someone getting arrested. We had a great time, Texter. That was a false alarm. Within 5 minutes, everything was back to normal. And that thing can happen anywhere. You know, tragedies can happen anywhere. You're seeing them happen anywhere. Mark Texter says the things that are going on in this country are intentional. They are intentional. If you think otherwise, you're not paying attention. As for gun violence, I get the opposition blaming the gun, but the gun is a tool. It's what's in the heart that's different. When my wife and I were in high school, it wasn't uncommon that guys would drive trucks with gun racks with rifles and shotguns. There were bullying and fights, and no one ever thought about going to get those guns. People are different today. Texter says, Diesel can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking Ozzy Osbourne said he and his family are moving back to England because of how much America has fallen.
That is true, Texter. That story broke a couple of months back. He said he's moving back to England. He says he wants to die in England. Yeah, I mean, not to say that Ozzy's dying. He just says he doesn't want to die here in America.
Yeah, I'm not saying, guys, that look, I love it here. We live in a great place. The upstate is fantastic. My family's fallen in love with it. I've fallen in love with it. My wife loves it here. We love it here. But in terms of retirement, if things keep going this way, we could retire abroad. 66-year-old Mark Ryan might not be here.
That's not that far away. Think about it.
No, it really isn't. All right, coming up next on the show, we'll give you an update on Logan Diggs, the transfer running back. Clemson gets a basketball transfer, and the baseball programs for both are heading in complete and total opposite directions. That's next. This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. Well, I feel like it's time to give credit where due, ladies and gentlemen. And that credit is owed right here. Yeah, here's why. Since they came on our show, Eric Bakich, since Clemson came on our show, the Clemson Tigers baseball team is 16-4. Prior to coming on this show, okay, 16-4 since coming on this show, Diesel. Since before coming on the show, they were 15-13.
Toot of our own horn.
Listen, you come to Offsides, you brave the heat that Offsides gives you. You have the guts to come on Offsides, which both Clemson's baseball and softball coach have had.
Yep.
And you get all of the great blessings in life.
The Offsides bump.
That's it. They're getting the Offsides bump. They were 15-13 before they came on the show. They're 16-4 since they've been on the show. Now, all of a sudden, Clemson's gone from needing a miracle to making the postseason to hosting a regional. Hosting, ladies and gentlemen, a regional. Potentially. How about that? Maybe your school can also benefit from the Offsides bump that we're looking for here today. Also, out and about, Logan Diggs. Logan Diggs is strongly considering the South Carolina Gamecocks, and he would be a really good addition. Now, he transfers away from Notre Dame. He wasn't scheduled to be the bell cow back at Notre Dame. Does he become the instant bona fide starter? Marshawn Lloyd leaving the Gamecocks is killing them. And what's so painful about that is it was so obviously a money grab. He was your starter. He was your bell cow guy, right? Was. And it's going to come down to South Carolina. It's going to come down to LSU. Where does he want to go? Would seem to me that South Carolina offers more playing time, possibly, than LSU does. LSU, you're one of many. South Carolina, you could be one of one. That seems to me where he's going to end up. That's my prediction today, anyway. We'll talk to Chris Phillips about this, and we'll do so next. Chris Phillips of the Spurs Up Show joins us on Monday. I join his show on Wednesday. This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. Wonderful to have you guys with us, man. Could not do it without you. We owe you so much thanks for all the records we're setting up in here. Also today on YouTube. What's good, my beautiful babies? On YouTube. Rolling on YouTube for about another 40 minutes. We now go through the top 5 at 5. Joining us right now is Mr. South Carolina Gamecock. Now, there are some Gamecocks who say our next guest does not represent them. And you're right, he doesn't. Okay, just like if you want to say that I represent the upstate, that would be great because I love it here. But I don't represent Clemson. I don't represent South Carolina. There seems to be, at major schools, room for one independent content creator to really hit it big. Room for one. At my school, Florida, the guy's name is In All Kinds of Weather. At Columbia, South Carolina, it's our next guest, Chris Phillips from the Spurs Up Show. Joins us right now. What's good, Chris? How are you, man?
Good chat with you, and I appreciate the kind words. And I appreciate you having me on, man. It's great to hear with you guys. Hope you enjoyed your vacation as I did mine. It's great to be back in the saddle. For sure.
Dude, what did you do?
We went on a cruise. Yeah, celebrated my sister's birthday on a cruise ship. Went out to the Bahamas, so had a real good time. It was a blast.
Celebrated my sister's birthday in the mountains of Bryson City in a cabin in the mountains. Okay. She got engaged up there when we were there.
Wow.
So, man, whitewater rafting, Bryson City, mountain views, man, it was incredible. It was incredible. What was less incredible was the Gamecocks' total face plan against Kentucky, Chris. Wherefore out there? What happened there?
Yeah, it was an ugly weekend, Mark, and I think you got to start. You know, people will look at the injuries, and obviously this is a banged-up ball club with Talmadge, Lee Croy, Braylon Wimmer, and Will McGillis all being out. Also, Noah Hall, your Game 2 starter. He's been out for quite a while. So people will look at the injuries. You know, they'll look at the bats cooling off. They'll look at some of the fielding miscues. But it really starts, Mark, with the starting pitching. You look over the last 2 weekends, the Gamecocks starting rotation, specifically a 9.87 ERA in the last 6 SEC games. It's just not going to get the job done, Mark. You know, it starts and ends with starting pitching in the SEC. And, you know, this offense has bailed you out a number of times this season, but you're not always going to score 10, 11, 12 runs in an SEC game. So, you know, I heard you talking about this earlier actually on the show, Mark. I'm not pressing the panic button on this group. I think it's a team, and I think D1Baseball.com showed you today with their rankings where they only dropped the Gamecocks to 6. I think this is a really good ball club still that's just in a slump. They're just cold right now. And I would tell people this, and I'm not trying to compare this group right now to the 2010 team that necessarily won the national championship, but it's, you know, just to humor myself, Mark, I was looking at the schedule from 2010, and do you know that group, they lost 2 of 3 to Kentucky, went on the road the next week, ironically, and swept Arkansas, where the Gamecocks go to this weekend, but they lost their last series of the year, 2 of 3, against Florida at home, and then went 2 in barbecue in the SEC tournament, and that team ended up catching fire and winning the national championship. So the bottom line is this, Mark, you just never know. We know what this team's capable of. I think they're still a really good team. I just think they're in a slump right now, and they've gotten cold. And here's a spin zone for you. Maybe this is me wearing the garnet goggles, Mark, but I'd much rather this team go cold right now and figure it out versus being the Tennessee of last year where you're hot, and then you go cold when it matters most. So as long as they have that upswing on the other side and they get hot at the right time, I'm not overly concerned what I'm doing. I'm frustrated, but I'm not concerned or hitting the panic button at this point.
Now, Chris, you have kind of indoctrinated me. You've given me the baptism by fire to college baseball. Admittedly, I'm still learning some of the rules. I don't get why there's such a discrepancy in popularity between March Madness and college baseball's postseason, because the postseason setup really seems damn cool. If you win the SEC tournament, does that give you the auto bid just like it does in basketball?
Yes, it does. And I would say, too, that, you know, similar to basketball, the conference tournament, I mean, it's beneficial for some teams in regards to seeding and kind of where you're at if you're on the bubble of certain things. But if you're a top 8 national seed or, you know, what have you, if you already kind of secured everything in your regular season, the SEC tournament isn't the most important thing in the world, not necessarily. But, yes, just like basketball, let's say you're only 12 of the 14 teams get in. So right now I think it's Ole Miss and Mississippi State would not make the tournament, which is ironic in its own self, seeing those are the two last national champions. But let's say you're the Georgia Bulldogs, or you're missing, whoever you are, you're at the bottom of the league, and you need to punch your ticket. If you win the SEC tournament, yes, Mark, you are in. So it can be really beneficial if you're on the bubble and you're fighting to get in the postseason, what have you. But I think a team like South Carolina, you'd more so like to win for just momentum purposes. But I don't think it's going to come to a situation where South Carolina's going to be like on the bubble by any means. But it could be the difference how they perform in Hoover between them being a top 8 national seed or not, which is really interesting. I know we'll talk about it in a few weeks because, Mark, I'm not sure if you know this, but the Gamecocks have just a horrid history in Hoover for whatever reason. I mean, like I mentioned, even their best teams in 10 and 11 basically went 2 in barbecue, didn't win a single game. I don't know what it is. There were people that had conspiracy theories that Ray Tanner didn't believe in the SEC tournament. He wanted to rest his pitching for the postseason. So, and it's a cool thing. I think the SEC tournament's a lot of fun. It's the best baseball. I mean, you could say it's even more competitive than Omaha because the SEC is the best conference in all of college baseball. But yeah, it's a great opportunity for certainly if you're down there at the bottom or you're on the bubble and you win the whole thing, you're in. And if you're in, as we know, Mark, the season basically starts over and you got a chance.
Logan Diggs, the battle between South Carolina and LSU here. If he commits to South Carolina, is he the bell cow back? Is he Marshawn Lloyd? Is he one of a few? How big of a deal would his commitment be? Big deal, little deal, or no deal, Chris?
I mean, I think it'd be a big deal, Mark, because it's at a position of need. I think immediately, I don't think it'd be anything, Shane Beamer made the comment last week, we're not out here guaranteeing starting spots or anything like that. I think you saw the quote that he had where, we had a kid that wanted us to guarantee him a starting spot. We wouldn't do it. He's going to another SEC school. But, I mean, we all know, right, Mark, there's certain situations where you bring a guy in from the portal, you don't bring him in to sit the bench. I mean, Spencer Rattler's a great example, right? And you bring guys in at a position of need, and you're going to say, hey, we're not going to be guaranteed any starting spot, but the position's wide open. So if you come in, do what you need to do, and you go win the job, you'll be our starting running back. So, I mean, certainly you think about the shape of the running back room, and, you like Juju McDowell to carry on Joner's a nice story, and maybe you can have, a magical season at that position. Realistically, the Gamecocks need that bell cow back, and they need a proven Power 5 back. And I mean, this kid Diggs from Notre Dame, I don't have his stats pulled up in front of me, but he's not like a 1,000-yard rusher, but he's somebody that at a school like Notre Dame has shown flashes, has shown promise. So I think certainly, Mark, he would be a guy that would be in position to win that starting running back job and be RB1 when the season starts. So it's no guarantee for sure, but I think it would definitely be a big deal. And there's a reason, listen, that LSU wants him, which I think right now he's actually favored to go to Baton Rouge. But we shall see if Shane Beamer can work his magic on the recruiting trail and in his sales pitch and get him to come to Columbia.
Yeah, Logan Diggs, 820 yards rushing last year for the Fighting Irish, second on the team. Their rushing leader had 920 yards, averaged 5 yards a carry last year. Good player, very available, looking for the best fit for him. If I'm Logan Diggs, I'm Gamecock bound because I think I have the opportunity to be the man, not one of a stable. I feel like I have an opportunity to be the guy to round out my career and become an NFL draft pick eventually. Might make a good business decision by going to South Carolina. And as much as I hate that that's what it's become, Chris, that's where we are. These kids are making business decisions now. So I'll bring you into what we were discussing at the open of the show today, Chris, and that is that there is such a discrepancy with what different media outlets are expecting from the Gamecocks this year. The ESPN FPI says they're the 42nd team in America and they're going to finish 5-7. Chris, are you wearing socks? Because I'm about to blow them off. The Gamecocks are favored in 4 games next year, according to ESPN's Football Power. 4, Chris, 4. They're favored against Furman. They're favored against Mississippi State, barely. They're favored against Vanderbilt, and they're favored against Jacksonville State, and that's it. As a matter of fact, Chris, ESPN's Football Power Index says Furman has a better chance to beat the Gamecocks than the Gamecocks do of beating Georgia. Okay? Now, I want you to marinate on that a little bit. 41% chance to beat Florida at home. You're at home, coming off of your bye in a total rebuild year that I think represents bottoming out for the Florida Gator football program. I think that's where Florida's headed in 2023. So all of which is to say, Chris, that I think the Gamecocks are one of the most underrated teams in America. But, I have expectations that are higher than the national punditry does. To me, 7-6 would mean that the record's the same as Will Muschamp. And in my research, Chris, coaches always take the jump in year 3. Just about always, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, it's fair to measure Shane Beamer by the record in 2023. If not now, when?
Well, Mark, I'm going to say this once and I won't say it again. The ESPN FPI is not worth the paper that it's printed on, my friend. I would not refer to it. I would not give it any credit, any credence, anything of the sort. So I'm going to go ahead and get that out there. And sorry about it to any of the ESPN folks who might hurt their feelings. But I saw that, and I don't give it any credit at all. I mean, that's not even being underrated, Mark, the whole 5-7 thing, being favored in 4 games. It's just being disrespected at that point.
Based on what, Chris?
Say it again?
Based on what? Do you discredit it just because you don't like what it has to say, or are you discrediting it based on empirical data?
Well, I mean, just following it year after year, I feel like that's the one that's the furthest off in regards to like their preseason, how they rate the teams or what have you. I mean, I just don't put a lot of stock in it. I mean, just look at this year. What is Florida, like 16th? Something like that. Gamecocks 42nd. I mean, that's just one example, too. So the ESPN FPI is just generally the one. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, but it's generally of all of the predictions or the prognostications or what have you. And I mean, Mark, you and I have had this conversation about what defines success for Shane Beamer.
It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed.
Yeah,
I feel like, Chris, the momentum has dipped in terms of forecasting. I'm not exactly sure why. But you and I have established, and as far as I know, you and I agree that the goal is 9-3, success is 8-4, disappointing is 7-5, and failure is 6-6. We agree on that, right?
Yeah, I still agree with that with you. I think because I feel it too, Mark. I mean, I definitely say that the hype train, for whatever reason, has lost some steam. And I think, Mark, it points back to why this is such a big year for Shane Beamer and company, right? Because this is basically the year that's going to tell you, is this just same old South Carolina, the 500 program they've been for over 100 years? Or is Shane Beamer breaking the mold in Columbia, and this is new age kind of football where 8 wins is now the floor? I mean, that's really what this season, I think that's what's on the line this year. And you can say that's, whatever. Maybe you could argue that's too harsh, but I mean, when you've got a guy like Spencer Rattler returning, Juice Wells, those guys didn't come back to win 6 games. They didn't come back to win 7 games. I could argue they didn't come back to win 8 games, right? So setting a new floor and breaking the mold and showing that we talk about all the time, Mark, about changing the culture and changing things behind closed doors and within the fan base and the belief of the fan base. And that's all great. And you need everything, changing things in recruiting. You need all those aspects. But you know what changes the culture, Mark? Winning. Winning changes it, because everybody wins in the offseason. Everybody sounds good at the podium. Billy Napier sounds great at the podium, but what do Gator fans care about? They care about winning. They want to win games, right? 5-7, 6-6 is not going to get it ddone, no matter how good he sounds, on the Gator booster tour, or whatever it is for them. So, it comes down to winning, and I agree with you. 9-3 is the goal for sure. Improving on last year, getting back to 8-4, I think will be a success. I think it'll be a great season. I feel very similar, Mark, at this point to how I felt last year. When we looked at the 2022 season, and you brought in Rattler and you brought in these other transfers, and you felt like 8 wins was very doable. And anything below that, I mean, I think 7-5 would have been a little bit more acceptable last year because you would have improved in the win total. But, I think if you go 7-5 or 6-6 with Spencer Rattler, you just kind of feel like, did we get the most out of what we signed up for? And I think the answer would be no. So, year 3 of a head coach is a big year to show the trajectory and the path the program. And you talk about the Muschamp numbers, and people want to get away from the champ era as much as possible. And one way to do that is have Shane Beamer surpass him in the first 3 years win total. So it's a big year upcoming. I mean, there's no question about it.
Chris, do you believe that Shane Beamer will get a little extra leash from the fan base just because of the undeniable positivity? I mean, that's obviously the massive difference between the Shane Beamer era and the Will Muschamp era. The win total is the same, but the culture and the vibe around the program is entirely different. So will the fan base give him a little extra leash, or are they going to try to be just as harsh? And if things don't go well, which I don't believe is going to be the case, I really don't. But if things don't go well over the next 2 seasons or so, is the fan base going to turn a little quicker on Shane Beamer? Are they going to turn on Shane, or or will there be a little extra leeway?
I think, the way you do things, Diesel, matters. So I think he definitely will get a little bit more leeway and a little bit more leash. Right. The way you impact people matters, the relationship you build and the relationship you build with the fan base. And obviously Shane Beamer having cut his teeth at the program before. And I'm speaking on, like, for example, Diesel, if they go 7-5, right, we'll sit here and say, it was a disappointing year, but nobody's going to say burn the program down or fire the coach because you went 7-5. Right. And if you do, I just think that's absurd. I really do. Now, nobody likes to lose games. And you know what's crazy, guys? You think about the last year. I mean, listen, the way they closed the season, it rectified all of the issues from a season ago. You beat Tennessee, you beat Clemson. The way you finished the year just completely changed the narrative of year 2 with Shane Beamer. But I recall after the Florida game, losing 38-6. And I mean, I had people commenting on our stuff. I saw it across social media. Gamecock fans were pissed, right? Talking about, well, is Beamer the guy? Does he have the guts to make the move on Marcus Satterfield? Does he have the guts to do this, that? Like, people were actually starting to question him because people hate losing, right? People hate losing. It'll make you turn on anybody faster than you want to. So, but I'll say this. I think this fan base is locked in for the long haul. They love Coach Beamer, but they believe in Coach Beamer. This fan base believes in Beamer ball to the moon. And, here's the big thing with Muschamp, because it's so funny, right? Not too long ago, I recall a time where this fan base loved Will Muschamp. Believe it or not, that time did exist. And so after year 3, they lose the bowl game 28-0. They still won 7 games. But I think people, for the most part, were still on board with Will Muschamp. I was on board with Will Muschamp. I hadn't said fire Muschamp at that point. But going 4-8 is what lost that leeway on Gamecock Nation. It wasn't necessarily anything that happened over that offseason or things he said or whatever. But, you start losing games, man. I mean, nobody's immune from the pressures that this conference will put on you and being the head coach at an SEC school. So, but again, to answer your question, I think as long as they're keeping their head above water, I mean, I think for at least the next couple of years, especially the way they're recruiting as well, he's going to get that leeway. He's going to get that leash. I don't think South Carolina's a program that is going to fire a coach after year 3 at any point. So maybe they'll get there one day, but they're not there right now. So to answer your question, yes, I think Beamer this fan base will be as patient as they possibly can be, but certainly the pressure to win is on.
Great catching up with you, pal. Talk to you Wednesday.
Hey, Mark, appreciate you guys. You have a great week.
You
Thanks,
the same.
Chris.
The top 5 at 5 is coming your way next here on Offsides. What is good, my friends? This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 p.m. today. Can I get an amen? 844-FAN phone. That's 844-326-3663 is the number. And the text line is there for you at 71307. Just start your text with the word fan, and away you go with your message. Plus, lots of comments coming in on the YouTube feed right now. Sorry in advance for our appearance. There's not much we can do about that, okay? Diesel and I make every effort every day. We try, okay? But all I can do is shake what my mama gave me. And, well, when I shake what my mama gave me, there's a lot of movement that goes along.
What do you think the beard is for? It's to cover up everything down here.
I see that a new listener, Bud R, says, is that Diesel in the small window? Why, yes, it is.
He must only come out to the live shows and think that I don't exist, that I'm an AI voice only.
If you listen really carefully to what people say, folks, they tell you what they want. Do you hear what Diesel's saying here? He must only come out to the live shows, never even sees me. We saw you at Twin Peaks, Diesel. It was good to see you. That was really a fun show. And certainly when the whole show can be out on location, it adds a whole different dimension.
Man, I was disappointed. I had an old radio buddy that I've never met face-to-face, worked in, I think, he was up in like Minnesota or something like that, but he's a Greenville local. So he comes back to South Carolina out of radio, and he's hanging out at Twin Peaks. I get a message about 30 minutes after I leave. Hey, man, was that you over in the corner? I was going to come say hi. Why didn't you? It's like we've known each other for like a year and a half, never actually met. I'm 30 feet away on a radio show. Come on over.
Oh, yeah. Always come by.
Always come by.
By the way, this Wednesday, we're going to be at Ingalls in Clemson this Wednesday. Very looking forward to that, man. My first show, I've done Seneca. I have not done Clemson. We're looking forward to being out at Ingalls in Clemson this Wednesday. If I have not had the chance to meet you, I would love to have that opportunity. But we've got some business to do up in here. It's called the Top 5 at 5, the top 5 biggest sports stories of the day. The top 5 topics we're discussing. Ladies and gentlemen of the Upstate, Offsiders. The Top 5 at 5 starts right now.
And now, the Top 5 at 5.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hit it.
5.
Man, the Braves, channeling my inner Stuart Scott, are like butter because they're on a roll. All they do is win series. They got another series dub yesterday. Back-to-back single-run wins over the much-improved Baltimore Orioles, runs the record now to 24-11. Here's how it happened by way of a player that some people feel could have an MVP season here in 2023.
Easy choice there to walk the right-handed batter. Harris puts bat on ball. There's a drive to deep center field. And the Atlanta Braves are going to walk it off this afternoon.
I'll tell you what, Diesel, that guy, Matt Vasgersian, is the voice of the show, the video game. So whenever I hear that voice, I feel like I'm playing the video game. It's like, oh, he actually does real baseball as well? It's crazy to me, man. But Atlanta, look, all they have done, they've won 1, 2, 3, 4 series wins in a row. Last series loss, April 21st to the 23rd to the Houston Astros. Now a 2-game set at home, interleague play against Boston. As a matter of fact, an interleague stretch is coming your way for Atlanta. The next 11 games, Atlanta plays all against American League opposition. We'll see how they do, but off to a sterling start are the Atlanta Braves. Michael Harris is the man. Next up,
4.
we will keep it on the diamond and 2 teams heading in opposite directions. Clemson, since Eric Bakich, Clemson baseball's head coach, came on this show on April 3rd. Okay, the team has gone 16-4. They were 15-13 the day he came on the air. You remember the tone of that interview, Diesel? It was kind of like, yeah.
Better start getting it done soon, man.
Yeah, the tone was like his first year isn't going so, like the vibe was that things weren't going so well. Now you talk to Eric, and I remember saying after that interview, I'm buying what he's selling. I believe in him. He has the vision. He sees the patience. He said in the interview, things are starting to click for us a little bit. He told you what was going to happen. They have more wins after that interview than they had all year before the interview. Just call it the offsides bump. That's what we've given them. And Clemson has gone from a postseason long shot to now a hosting a regional possibility. How about that?
Now, I don't think we can take any credit for a bump with the softball team, but they have been lights out since. And consider this, Mark. This is proof that the bump is real. We start bringing on Furman head coach Clay Hendricks every week during the football season. They make a postseason run. We start bringing on Bob Ritchie every week. They make it into the NCAA tournament and knock off Virginia. So the bump is real. This is a fair warning to all coaches who have not yet come on the show.
Shane Beamer, do you want the postseason bump? Well, if you give me a call and apologize, that bump can be yours. Mark Kingston, do you want the offsides bump?
Good luck with that.
Could be yours. Okay, could be yours. If the apology is right. How about South Carolina baseball? Swept over the weekend by Kentucky. It's hard to maintain a fever pitch the entire year. You know, it really is. I've looked at pro baseball teams. Almost every MLB team that has won the World Series had some sort of funk in the middle of the year. You know, a few years ago, the last time I think the Yankees won, they had a stretch where they were 16-27 over 43 games.
I think it's a good thing for a team. It teaches you resiliency. It teaches you the ability to recover when a game or two or 42 in the case of the Yankees that year don't go your way. I think every team needs a little bit of adversity. If you're just that lights out baseball team all season long, you don't know how to deal with that.
No, you don't. But the Gamecocks scuffling, the Clemson Tigers soaring, and let me tell you this, Caden Grice, the Clemson ace, had one of the most pimp plays I've ever seen in my life, had a comebacker come back right at him, as nonchalant as possible. Just sticks his glove out. This thing is screaming at him at 120 miles an hour. Nonchalantly, boop, trots off the mound as if he knew it was coming the whole way. One of the most pimp plays I've ever seen on a diamond.
If it was Mark Ryan,
here's to you.
He would have gone, ah, when the ball came at him.
I would have taken a bow, Diesel. I would have taken a bow after that. Are you kidding me? You make the impossible not only look possible, but downright easy. Next up.
3.
Folks, I was diving into the ESPN Football Power Index game-by-game projections today because those projections say the Gamecocks are the 42nd best team in America in 2023. There is a major discrepancy between what ESPN feels about the Gamecocks and what CBS Sports does. Dennis Dodd, his post-spring rankings, has the Gamecocks 20th. So which is it? Who is more likely to be accurate? I think it's CBS. But if you look at this ESPN win projection, the Football Power Index, the Gamecocks are favored in, carry the one, wait for it, 4 games. 4 games all year. They're favored to beat Furman, although they have a greater chance of losing to Furman than they do of beating Georgia. Put that down your pipe and smoke it, Gamecock fans. No, I'm just kidding. That's brutal, isn't it? So they're favored to beat Furman, Mississippi State, favored to beat Jacksonville State, favored to beat Vanderbilt. Those are the only teams ESPN's FPI says the Gamecocks are better than 50-50 to win. And so my point is this. There's pressure on Shane Beamer this year. He's not on the hot seat, but there's pressure. And that's a difference. Shane Beamer, through 2 years, has the exact same record as Will Muschamp in Columbia. You hate Will Muschamp if you're a Gamecock fan. If Shane Beamer finishes 7-6 this year, he'll have the exact same record as Will Muschamp through 3 seasons. You don't want that. All we keep hearing is about momentum and recruiting class rankings. 24/7 Sports has the Gamecocks 8 right now. But at what point are you going to demand those recruiting wins start turning into actual wins? Mythical wins start turning into real wins. Why not you? Why not now? Because if you look at the coaches, new hires that have been successful in college football, they almost always make the jump in year 3. So I am predicting South Carolina is going to make the jump. And I am predicting that ESPN's Football Power Index is wrong. But believe you me, there is pressure on Shane Beamer, Diesel, because if they do not, the natives are going to be restless.
Man, timing means everything in life. And how terrible is it for South Carolina that Tennessee decided to come back at the exact same time you're trying to come back? You know, if you had hired Shane Beamer, if you could just pick that thing up and move it 5 years prior, you would be blowing Tennessee out of the water year in and year out. But Tennessee got good at the same time you're getting good.
The reality is, Diesel, South Carolina, Beamer year 2, beat Tennessee Heupel in year 2. And there's no reason why, how do we know Tennessee's going to be any good this year? Really? How do we know?
Yeah, they got a lot of question marks, a lot of changeover.
How much is the drop-off from Hendon Hooker to Joe Milton? How do we know?
Milton looked pretty good.
Know, right? So yeah, pressure on Shane Beamer. I say, and let's establish for you guys one and all, here is the criteria. 9-3 is your goal if you're a Gamecocks fan. 8-4 is success because you would have repeated an 8-4 season. Muschamp couldn't do that. You would then have raised the bar. 7-5 is a disappointment, and 6-6 is failure. That is the bar, should you choose to accept it. Next up.
2.
A couple of transfer news and notes to share with you about. Clemson basketball gets a big one. Joe Girard from Syracuse, 16.4 points per game scorer. Love the opportunity at Clemson. Remember what Graham Neff told me on the sideline of the orange and white game. Had a great conversation. He wanted to bring up to me. They hear everything. And it was on some level, Diesel. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that the athletic departments listen to our show. We've got a great show. Shouldn't be surprised, but I was a little surprised that Graham Neff, Clemson's AD, was able to recite every single talking point that we had on Brad Brownell.
Well, it's their job to know what the media entities in the area think. It's their job to know what they're talking about, what the listeners are talking about. Because look, when you're an AD, all you ever get is sunshine and roses. All you get is people coming up to you and say, "Hey, man, I really like the job that you're doing. I really appreciate everything you're doing." And that's how you get yourself into an echo chamber. And that's how you really get yourself in trouble when all you have around you are yes men.
So Graham Neff said to me, and these guys are also Diesel sports fans, so it wouldn't surprise me that they listen to Sports Talk Radio. He said, "Look, Mark, we need to take the next step now. And if we don't, there will be a change. We're absolutely willing to make a change." Joe Girard is a guy that can help you avoid having to make that change. That could be a life-saving get for Brad Brownell if he wants to keep his job at Clemson, which by all accounts, he does. And how about Logan Diggs? The update on him, running back, Notre Dame, second leading rusher for the Irish last year. Notre Dame did not have a 1,000-yard back, but Logan Diggs was number 2 at 820 yards. They were close to having 2,000-yard backs. Is reportedly down to LSU and South Carolina. There's a picture of him visiting Willie B with Beamer over the weekend. That would be a great get. That could be the bell cow back. That could make a weakness on the Gamecocks offense a strength. And if I'm Logan Diggs, I'm South Carolina bound. I like the opportunity better there than what I would think would be a platoon for me at LSU. He could be the starter at South Carolina for the next 2 or 3 years, Logan Diggs, should he choose to go there. And finally,
1.
How about some NBA predictions between now and the end of the second round of these series? The Miami Heat, I don't know what's going on there, but Jimmy Butler just has a psychotic obsession with winning, and I love that. And I'm going to take the Heat to go up 3-1 and beat the Knicks in 6 games. Boy, tonight, a lot's on the line for Golden State, man. A lot. You lose tonight, the Lakers probably have the series wrapped up. They would fall down 3-1. I've picked the Warriors to win this series. I'm going to stick with that position, that prediction, but they got to find a way to get it done tonight in La La Land. They've got to figure out a way to make that happen, man. They really do.
These last 2 games have proven to me why I don't watch the NBA playoffs until we get to the finals. The last 2 Lakers-Warriors games. These are supposed to be the 2 best players in the NBA right now. The 2 biggest faces, the 2 biggest names in the NBA right now. We've had 1 good game and 2 30-point blowouts in this series. This isn't good basketball. This is terrible basketball.
LeBron James discusses right here his advice to teammates during their playoff run.
Stay off the TV and stay off social media. You win a game, everybody's the greatest player in the world. You lose a game, they throwing dirt on you. It's literally that simple. It's all about, training your mind for, the next challenge. What's the next challenge? This game is over with. We played well. Okay, cool. But we got another one on Monday.
I'm going to go Warriors in 7, although that prediction is shaky. All right, I'm going to go Heat in 6 over the Knicks. The Celtics are angry, blew an opportunity. James Harden looked like the Harden of old. Played more like James Harden yesterday. Celtics in 6. And also, I like the Nuggets in 6 over the Suns. I think Denver beats Phoenix the next 2. And those are today's top 5 at 5. Now it's your chance to chime in, which you can do at 844-FAN-PHONE. That's 844-326-3663. The text line is there for you at 71307. Start your text with the word fan and away you go. You can also watch us right now on YouTube. That's right, my friends. The Fan Upstate on YouTube. Great to see all you guys in here right now. Always give you the live show on the video feed from 3 o'clock until the top 5 at 5 is over at 5:20. Coming up next on the show, what if I give you the best and worst picks in the NFL draft that was? My name is Mark Ryan. He's Diesel. And we collectively are Offsides, the most interactive sports talk show anywhere, right here on the Fan Upstate. All right, my friends, here to tell you
Hey guys, just wanted to take a minute to let you all know. Thank you so much for joining us on the stream today. Usually we like to jump on here for just a minute and say goodbye and thank you for joining the show. But when Mark has a live read, we got to block that for a couple of seconds. So appreciate you being here. Mark is going to be in studio tomorrow, so we will be streaming here tomorrow again. You can catch the show tomorrow. Wednesday, he'll be out on location at Ingalls and Clemson. So no live web stream on Wednesday, but that should mean we're back to it on Thursday and Friday. So appreciate you being here.
Yeah, guys.
If you haven't yet, click subscribe to the channel. We are growing by leaps and bounds. It's crazy how fast. Click that subscribe button. Tell your friends if you like watching the show that they should subscribe as well.
Yeah, guys. Appreciate you very, very much. Thank you so much. Great to be back. Great to see all the activity going on here on our page. Help us grow this thing, man. The best thing you can do for us is let a friend know about us, right? Let a friend know that they can watch us on YouTube. They can get us on the Odyssey app, right? You can even get our podcasts, which is just the show in bite-sized form for you on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, etc. And of course, if you want to listen on the radio, always my favorite, 97.7 FM in Greenville, 97.1 FM in Spartanburg. You guys are the best. We love you. We'll see you tomorrow.